Hi,
My
Fro.
good, my goodness, you guys are ahead of time. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome
Are you
aboard.
having brunch, Peter?
Yep.
Yep. Cool.
I know no one wants to watch me eating, so I have the cam off today.
This is very true. So just checking things here to get ready for you guys. Okay, hang on. I am very, very, very excited about today.
Ah,
It's just crazy. Okay, hang on here. So we'll see who's joining today. I sent the call out a little wider than normal. And Mark is here, for which I am very grateful. Hey, Mr. Mark.
Hi.
Because I sent the call out a bit wider, I'm going to wait just a brief minute. I'm away from my normal place. I'm in Norway with the family for almost 2 weeks, which is nice, except
great.
had internet
Hi, Mark.
problems today, so I'm not at home.
Hi, Peter, and hello to Mohit and Eric, who I don't think I've met before. I've been
Yeah,
busy
yeah,
there
yeah. This
elsewhere.
is our first time. Good to see you.
That's a great opportunity for a brief introduction, first by Mohit and then by Eric, if you don't mind, guys.
Okay. So I am an independent researcher working at the intersection of medium design, augmented intelligence, and complex systems. So currently, I'm working on a project for building our medium of interaction into a medium of cognition. So, using the insights of distributed cognition and from disciplines like architecture, neuroscience, based on the entanglement principles of quantum physics and complexity science.
Hi, Mark. I'm Eric. I live in Delaware, and I'm retired.
You're very quiet, Eric, for some reason.
Okay, that would be.
I was even more quiet because I was
Yep,
muted, but
that would be this microphone here. Can you hear me now?
yeah, that's
Okay, good.
better. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, Mark. I'm Eric. I'm a retired software engineer. I'm in Delaware. I'm connected with the University of Delaware and their lifelong learning program now. But my interests are how can we take the ideas of Ted Nelson and Doug Engelbart and expand them going forward, and the possibility of spatial computing is a promising direction for it.
Thank you, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Peter and Mark, do you mind introducing yourself to Eric? I'm not sure if he knows even who you are, Peter.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we should have done this before.
Peter, do you want to go first?
I think he's chewing.
I was chewing. Well, I'm a lawyer, programmer hybrid, independent scholar. I've been with the group for ages since Mark first introduced me to Frode a long time ago. And Frode and I share the bond of having both attended the most wonderful university in New York State, Syracuse.
That's a brief summary. Okay. Mark?
Okay. Well, yes, I'm a sort of semi-independent researcher. I have a fig leaf of being a visiting fellow at my old university, but essentially now I'm unwaged independent researcher. Sort of, I suppose I'm supposed to be retired now. In UK, so I recently, rather alongside Fred, I studied a doctorate in web science at Southampton University, which is a sort of central hybrid media stuff. Hello, Tom, and my area of interest really is sustaining knowledge long term. So I've 40 years plus of basically turning up to broken systems. I've been an information emergency plumber after I was a naval signals officer. So I have a somewhat different experience of information. Everyone else is talking about what they want to happen. I'm talking about what actually is happening and can we make anything work out of it, which I've come to realize is a somewhat unusual sort of niche to be in. And at the moment, sorry, I haven't been around recently because I've been doing something for client in Oz, and I have been. I'm shepherding ACM conference at the moment, and nothing is documented, and everything's changed, and everyone's unhappy. But apart from that, all is wonderful. Lovely to see you all.
Speaking of broken systems, right?
Hi, Tom.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, Tom, why don't you also do a brief intro to Eric?
Okay. Well, I thought we do this before, but okay, no problem. Talking about myself is one of my great sins in life. I am like Mark, always into trying to figure out how to unbreak systems. In my case, one of my primary focuses for decades has been the education system, but I also understand the parallels between what's going on in education and the society at large, because my background is in political science in terms of degrees, and but I've been a technologist since the Apple II days, so I've got that all going in parallel, and yeah, it's all kind of coming together, because I've always approached things from the perspective of the user, to quote Tron, uh, and that's made me a little bit of an oddball when it comes to the technology side of things. And my understanding of the technology side of things makes me a bit of an oddball when it comes to the academic side of things. So I'm always nowhere at the same time.
Thank you, Tom. Peter Demetrius, good to see you. Do you want to do a really
Hi,
super
Peter.
brief intro to Eric? I don't think we did it last time for everybody.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, quick. I'm retired from IBM after 42 years last year, and have a lot of experience in application development mostly. My world was involved in bringing Smalltalk to the programming world back in the 90s and 2000s. That was my big shift. Done a lot of work recently with the Federated Wiki, working with Ward Cunningham over the past 8 to 10 years on his next version of Wiki, which is kind of fun to play with. And I've been involved in some 3D work, which is where I got sucked in over the past years with when the research and the stuff that Frode is doing with the headset is amazing and fun. I think it's wide open and has a lot of interesting things. And I've got some friends who do a lot more of that than me that I kibitz on. So I'm kind of bridging communities a lot of times and poking ideas back and forth. That's me in a nutshell. And a real tech little nerd geek. I don't have a PhD in anything other than life.
Perfect intro. Perfect intro. Okay, I'm going to move you guys small. Now, if anybody else happens to join, please just say welcome so-and-so, so I know that they're here, because I can't see them. You can see my slides, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is so absolutely exciting, right? So I had a brief text chat with Mark earlier today, and he pointed out some things, and there was some back and forth, and I was like, no, the whole main point was missing. So it's now in here. So this is good. You've heard about origami text before in the guise of an EPUB standard. This is trying to do something even simpler, and I blame one single person, Eric. Eric sent this message, and of course, in this community,
Yes.
this is what we think about constantly. So because of you, Eric, and because of having done one joke project, one revival project, and a kind of utility project with Claude in Xcode, I decided to see what could be done for this kind of thing. And my discovery, and if you disagree with me, that's totally cool. And also, for once, try not to interrupt, because I'm on a flow. Please write notes for comments and questions afterwards. But in my experience, Dave Millard, professor and friend of Mark and mine at Southampton, when he used the headset app the last time, he said he wishes the AI could control it in the same way as the user, which is clever and obvious once I heard it. Now, it turns out that vibe coding, I had a misconception. You probably didn't, but my misconception was Claude or whatever will do the code. You'll get all kinds of stuff, and it might be spaghetti, it might work, we don't know. But what is really mind-bending to me is that Claude Code acts as a client to Xcode. So that means that it has to be validated by Xcode. It uses the libraries that are provided. So that's why I put the sentence, the threshold of creating an app has been lowered to almost nothing. And I'm talking about serious app. I'll give you a brief demo. And the whole point of today is, well, it's a little bit to try to sell you on the big idea of origami text, but the bigger idea is to sell you on even early Photoshop changed image editing forever. I believe we're now at a point where anybody with our resources, like a private individual with a little bit of money, not thousands or hundreds of thousands of millions, just a few hundred, can really make a solid, usable app. That is absolutely crazy. Because also earlier today, Mark wrote FOSS, and I don't know if I've heard it before, but it means free open source software. And very often somebody will make a new standard and an app, but everybody has to use their app to use the standard, nothing happens. Now it's become so ridiculous that we're going to do something live in a bit where you guys will suggest something and I'll see if Claude can do it while we talk. Right? I mean, and it is a mind-bending shift beyond anything I've ever come across. So briefly, ostensibly, today is about Origami Text, the app, and the format. But it really is about this thing they called vibe coding. Let's just call it LLM and Xcode, right? So this particular way of doing it, because of Eric's beautiful invitation, and because we're all here, I believe, fans of HyperCard and very, very simple, elegant ways of doing things, and because none of us here support massive corporations in this, other things, sure, but it is really nice if we have an object that is a communication. So the whole point here is you have a JSON object that is the formality, and then inside it, it's plain text. And we also have a way of naming these files. And please, let me say it, and I'll probably say it again, all of this is up for grabs. Right now, it does username, title, and a date, not what's here, it's been updated. If you guys think it should be do something else, we can do that, right? That's what's so absolutely mad about this. This is the first time I can imagine presenting to you guys a piece of relatively robust software. But if we did agree to change something, it's possible. So the whole thing we're trying to do is communicate via small connected units, right? I'll go through that after. The point is that the mechanism, how these units move, is irrelevant for this piece of software. So for instance, well, it has the notion of a community folder. That could be on a server, it could be on iCloud, it could be on a file system, or it could be local, really doesn't matter. The files that go between people can be emailed, FTP'd, texted, whatever, doesn't matter. This system doesn't care about that at all. So the things that have been built is, this is what Claude said at the end. I don't think it's actually that useful. So before I actually show you what it is, any questions or comments? Okay. So you can see here from the discussions I've had of building this with Claude, I'm going to make you guys a bit bigger. I asked it because it knows I'm having a meeting with you guys. That's the other thing. I know you guys are all serious techies, but this was a huge shock to me. The Claude AI in Xcode is a full Claude. So I can tell it things like, Ted Nelson did this and this. What do you think about how that would relate to this other thing? And then it will bloody well react to it. It's absolute insanity. So based on what we've been doing, it's written down, because I wanted to cheat, have some slides for you guys, right? And I told it, this is the format, these are the principles. Eric sent some principles via email. All of these we need to discuss and incorporate. It doesn't really matter what it actually says. It's just the crazy thing that it's here. So I'm going to see any, looking at your comments. Sobering experience of Claude Code, yes. Yeah. So the way that I look at any AI, the human is the manager. Even a human worker can do stupid shit. So I'm not saying this is a nirvana and everything is reached and the end of the world. No. But I am saying that for all intents and purposes, the cost, if we take into account, sorry, I tabbed wrong here. If we take into account fixes, revisions, further testing, and all of that, it's basically been reached. So here it is. This is origami text. It even takes care of the little about box. And as you'll see, it's properly open source. It's the MIT license. It was Claude who told me I needed a specific license. I can't just say it's open. There's a credit to us. There's the URL. The settings are very robust. It does the settings easily. Now, because this is based on a discourse, one thing it needs to know is who the user is. So if you're an academic, you will have an ORCID ID, ORC ID. Mark, how do you say it?
I believe it's normally called ORCID,
Yeah.
but I suspect, like all these other things, like LaTeX or LaTeX, all this sort of thing, you can you can row your own, and occasionally people in the room may look surprised. I don't think there is a necessarily agreed pronunciation of it.
Yeah, fair enough. Also, I can toggle to use a test account, so I can communicate with myself. Right? That was one prompt to get that working as a toggle here, and it's phenomenally useful for testing because you guys can't test it because I built this with my machine being macOS 27 and therefore Xcode 27, so builds cannot go live, which I just discovered an hour ago. Right? It also allows you to mute people. So if there are people in the community who's just beginning to be a bit spammy, just mute them, right? There are options here for normal writing. This is extremely basic. If you also use a PDF library, it can open so that you can set that. There's AI for views. And this is really key. It is really, really simple to make a view for this. You don't have to redo the app. It's built a more modular system where you can define a view of the data and it can be plugged in. And there's a starter and it gives information. If we think this is an exciting approach, we should definitely make this clear for people and deal with it. And then finally, this information about the format. So as it goes on, it is written this markdown document, right? Now, author, that was it can actually import author documents and it can import markdown documents and Word documents now. So if I go into the original origami text, for instance, this is what it looks like. These are rubbish because I've been testing, but it looks normal and nice, right? So we have a few things. One thing I want to add is what this is when it's published. I want to be able to have a field where, say, if it's an RFC or if it's a statement, the kind of stuff we've all talked about, right? If you have been communicating with people, you can also do this. I could, for instance, say for attention of Mohit. So all of you can get it. It's an open, free piece of paper, but Mohit will have it bold because it's to him. So I don't need that. There's a double title. Don't need that. Okay. So now I export Command-Shift-E, or I can do export. And this is where it's beginning to be interesting. This is where I say that's an RFC. I forgot. It literally was done 15 minutes before the meeting. It's not pretty, but it is there, right? This is the formatting of the ID. The document is, the title is origami text, initial, beginning, last name, and then the exact time to make it unique. If this was written by AI, I can actually choose to have that as a metadata tag saying it was produced on behalf of me. So I'm just going to do this. And I think I did it to the right place. So I have to choose folder for this. Yeah, you can, I'm just using my desktop now. But here are the folders. So now you can see responding. Okay, so this is the first origami document. And this is key. It, of course, works on Visual Meta. There's a button to hide it. right? Also, it's super easy thing to make. And published, I have published this document. I can supersede it, follow up, use it as a template, or retract it. So if I now do supersede, it allows me to make a new version, version 2. And it will publish that as a new document. So let's just do this. New thing. And then I just save, export, no special thing, boom. Timeline, here it is, Origami Text version 2. We have all documents. We have, this is also really important. These are the documents I've published. These are my drafts. Once something is published, it is no longer a draft. So the basic versioning, and all of this is just fun. But the last few things to show you is we have these basic connection views. We have author views. There's only 2 authors. It'll list whatever they have made. Hot paragraphs, if they've been cited, we don't have that yet. We can do AI insights. Yeah, it hasn't gone in there yet. It'll find themes. Open questions, disagreements, health. So these are computational or AI, and they can be produced as different views. So do you agree that in terms of this is just maybe 100, 200 pounds worth of tokens done in half a week? It's a bit amazing. The question of whether it's useful is an entirely different question.
Sorry, I wasn't implying it wasn't useful. I was just genuinely trying to understand. I'm sitting here at the moment. I've got Discord open. I've got Slack. I mean, but because various people insist that I can't work with them unless they use that system. So I'm wondering. So my question is more narrow. It's just saying, okay, so what's this using, which the plethora of existing information systems don't do?
The key here is. Let me start less practical and more philosophical. It can be the approach. I'm not talking about the implementation of the specific structure of the document. I feel it's more of a hypertextual approach, even though both Doug and Ted use databases. I think it is important that we own our own data, first of all. Masses of it should never lose it. It should never be an algorithm for the kind of community. So this is for our size community or bigger. This is not designed to replace Twitter because people could start spamming it and do all kinds of stuff. The benefits are we as a community, the immediate people in the room, and a few more people couldn't be here. Any one of you can get the code from this on your Mac and just type in, I don't like what Frode did there. It's absolutely stupid. Let me do this other thing. So the entire system. And I'm going to talk to you like you're babies because I'm a baby too. This is really hard to understand. We can change the program as easily as before we could do a pencil sketch. It's loopy, right? I mean, what I would look.
And forgive me, that ability is not new. I know it's exciting when you do it yourself for the first time, and I've had my own sort of little epiphany tinkering around with the AI. But I'm trying to drill behind that in the sense that. So one of the things that I take from that is it's federated. You're going down the federated route, which is not a well understood subject by the majority of people. It's not, when I say it's not understood, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just they don't know about it. And what I'm finding in trying to help someone implement one is that the biggest problem is that people actually who don't work in federated text systems the whole time really don't have a clue what it means, because there's a big disconnect between the sort of notion of ownership of something and then as opposed to, well, where does it live on my machine? Or because people broadly understand, sort of the sort of relationship with servers and things, and that what took most of them 20 years or something. So it's unsurprising that people are struggling with this notion. And often it's sort of we intermix, probably confusingly, that there's the sort of social aspiration layer, description layer of it, and then the implementation layer. Because of course, at the end of the day, what you can't escape is you get the overview and you then go to use this thing, and there's a thing where you type stuff in a box and stuff happens, but it doesn't really explain what's going on, which is where people get lost.
Yeah. I'm honestly not worried about that yet, because this is not designed for the general user. It is designed exactly for people like us. Now, your points are still valid even within that. There is no onboarding, there's no welcome, there's no explaining. If we go further with this, that has to be there. There's no question. It literally has to say something like, it's like giving someone a letter, a physical paper letter. That's a big part of it. But the real excitement for me is, scaling to market, people's perceptions, all of that, that's all real. But I just feel that if we as a community can build something like this in a world, to use the language again, to hell with people, not in a bad way, but as in let them not water down what this can be, because maybe we get to a threshold where someone can look over our shoulder and say, "You did what?" This is not there yet at all, but this is just a demonstration that proper code that can be in the App Store. I have 2 other apps in the App Store done in the same method. They work. That's the word thing. They work.
So what kind of things are we doing in this that we can't do in a messaging app, in a general messaging system?
Well, that's partly the threading, and so here you have copy to cite, so you can cite a specific section of a specific message. You can't do that with an email, and also we have you can respond.
Forgive me.
I'm answering you.
Okay,
I think it's a very good question. You can also do things like say this. You read this. You want to extend it, support a question, disagree. We have link types, but we have link types that aren't types. They're just you can't just click to reply. You have to choose one currently. So boom, disagreeing with, that's standard text. And so this is not very cool. And I won't tell you why.
So that's interesting, because have you read much about sort of, because we've been here before with Trig's work. It was the first Hypertext PhD was all about link types, and he spent a long time and worked out, I think there were something like 157 different link types, and that was all you'd ever need. And basically that was the end of link types, because Mark, systems were then created where you had to decide something to which you didn't know the answer before you could go to the next step. And that is difficult in a messaging sense, because you may not know. It's fine to know, I definitely disagree with that. But in most cases, you may just have a comment. So forcing someone to go through a complex triage
it's not a complex triage, Mark.
Well, it doesn't matter. Even if there are only 2 things, you've still got to decide. It's the old 2-button meme. You've still got to make a decision, and that's the fundamental sort of grist in the mill, the friction that actually slows down the communication.
Mark, yes, I have the same PhD as you. I have read the same sources. I am familiar with the problem with link types. Absolutely. The difference between then and now, we can do it. And if let's say you take this repo from me and you build a different version that only has a respond, not the other ones, totally cool. That is an open market of interaction ideas. Right? I'm not saying that any of these, all of these features or whatever are my memory of 30 years worth of working with this. Most of it is probably incorrect.
Yeah. Right? Okay. Just to be clear, my comment earlier wasn't about credentialism, or so. I literally just Trig's work really was the sort of bottom of this. And what's interesting is we haven't gone back to that probably for a good reason. So I was just interested as to what the genuine sort of thought was behind doing this, because you presumably did it after conversation, which I've not heard.
No, there was no conversation. It was just that email. This is just literally so. Here's the desktop, right? And it's just these 2 documents that have been sent out. So but the fact that you can have, if you choose to disagree, it then has a link to that document. Oh, did I delete it by accident? Right. Let me just put them back. Right. So if we go back here and you click disagreeing with first origami document, it loads it. Right. The fact that we can play with these things, I just think is absolutely fantastic. Right. Hide metadata. We talked about that for visual meta forever. No, actually, let's show it, hide it, whatever. It can be a button. We can even do things like let's go. Yeah, okay, so this is a big one. So I select this text and well, actually, I don't know where it is now, but what I'm going to do is copy to sites. Then I'll make a new document, new for fun or site thing. And that's me. So I'll just put that down here, right? Save, export, put on the desktop. So here's a link. No surprise. But also, look at this tiny little icon here. Click on that. It shows it inline. Is it stretch text?
Right.
Is it a
But I have
is
to
it a
have the
transclusion? Is it whatever? I don't know. But the point is, we can play with these things. This is just a prompt to add or change.
yeah. But to understand, so but I the thing is, so I get that long thing that's not quite clear if that's a file name or a link or something, and I have to have a special app enabled to unwrap that extra bit, if I'm understanding. And again, none of this is negative. I'm genuinely trying to understand what this is actually solving. I totally get the fun of making it. I
It's
totally
not. It's
get
not. It's
what
not
it could
about.
do, but
Okay,
it's
Mark. Okay, but there's it's not what it's solving. I've already gone through that. It is not owned by a database. It's not going to rot because something goes down. Each individual piece of communication is a file. These are fundamental local first issues. Whether it's considered a problem or not really depends on the user. The point is more that we have a sandbox experience now as a community, that if we agree with the format for these little JSONs, we don't have to agree on a single interaction. We don't have to agree on a single problem being solved. So it's more the opportunity, right? So this is the document. It's JSON, super simple, right? It has happy little IDs. It's got happy little information, metadata. It's all there, right? That's the basic. We've never had it. We've never had a chance where somebody builds an app. I mean, Author has cost me over the years a very, very large amount of money. This has cost me maybe under £200 in tokens. So if next Monday, let's say one or two or three or all of you come back with what we saw first Monday was inspirational but rubbish, I'll fight you on it, and it'll be the best possible fight I could imagine. You know, it's not a fight of what if, it is a fight of I did, and now I can undo and redo. I used the term before, but it absolutely blows my mind. And because the documents, the only thing that I demand in quotes, is that the documents say what the heck they are, the visual meta principle. They say it on the same layer as contents. Then almost nothing else matters because people can choose what they use. And I'm sure Peter Wasilka will use it in a very different way. Over to you, Peter.
Okay, I had a very interesting experience this morning. I was looking at the Open Type Font Inspector, and I just dropped the link on the side, and it had the substitution tables that you can pull out of an open type font. Those describe how if you have a sequence of glyphs that appear in order, you should replace them with an alternate glyph, and it handles things like contextual substitution, dealing with custom kerning in some situations. But when I open that inspector, if you take a look at it, it gives you a huge glob of JSON that is utterly unintelligible. So I opened it up and looked at the GSub table for the default font, and it has a block of JSON at the bottom called lookups. And it was utterly opaque to me. So I copied that block of JSON and I dropped it into Grok and asked Grok if it could figure out what the format was in that and how do you make sense of it. And it was just absolutely amazing. It just popped up a beautiful description of the format. It walked me through what the different aspects of it were so that I could go and reach in with code that I might write myself and actually extract something useful from it. And absent that, I would have probably had to kill half a day reading through documentation describing the open type data file format, and it still would have been very frustrating developing the mental mapping between the block of JSON that it was dumping and what the documentation was talking about. So that's the capability that simply didn't exist before you had modern systems, and it's just incredibly helpful. And just for background, the reason I did that is I've been doing a deep dive into typography issues because I really want to get LaTeX style formatting and NUF+ line breaks on my web pages. And when you go down that road, there's a beautiful library called Tech Line Break 2 that can handle getting the justification right for you. However, it depends on knowing what the width of the glyph characters are. And then the width of the glyph characters takes you down the rabbit hole of dealing with the kerning and font substitution issues, which is why I found that font inspector to try to get the data out. Because if I could pull the data out from a font ahead of time, then I could just prepackage the data file and not have to have the web app wasting time trying to render the characters so that it can measure them on screen to figure out what values to throw into the line break algorithm.
Right. Thank you, Peter. Eric, I'm just going to throw out a question, but you go before anybody answers the question. The question is a reversal of Mark's question. What is the benefit of using current apps over trying something new that might be better, other than the obvious learning curve? I'd like to hear comments on that. Eric, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think apps need some time to grow up. And so whatever we build, we should not have any expectation of rolling it out too far other than our community. So I want to just share this sobering experience I had with Claude, just the vibe coding a local first file sharing app.
Just really briefly, yeah. So we understand, did you do it within Xcode or on the web, all of it?
This is a Node.js code written through Claude in chat. And just using a free account, no paid account with Claude. Okay. So the sobering experience is that the thing worked. I tested it on 2 machines at home, and I was able to send files to different directories using Hole Punch's Hypercore protocol.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, so what got me is if I was a naive developer and I didn't know what questions to ask about this technology, that would just open up a can of worms. So the things now I had asked these previously and I'd gotten some decent answers, but I knew to ask these questions about security. How much quality assurance is required to inspect this code and its dependencies and gain an awareness of potential threat exposures that the user would need to be aware of? The data is encrypted in transit, but not at rest, and the user has to be responsible for that. Keys need to be shared with peers in private channels outside of the application. And if this is for a company, they'd need to engineer a VPN for the users of this application. And then privacy. If any of the peers are subject to GDPR or data sovereignty regulations, then there's risks of non-compliance. And also it may be impossible to delete data if it's already been replicated, and the user needs to know how to mitigate these risks if that applies to them. And there's IP anonymity issues because in a distributed hash table, your IP is needed to find another peer. And infrastructure, these use append-only logs, and that could consume storage. And if you're not managing that properly, that can grow quickly. So those are things from my experience that before I do anything with this app, people need to be aware of. But a naive person just saying, hey, I code this now, it works. Roll it out, put it in production. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that on the record. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. And Tom, if you can hold your fire a little bit longer. Mark, you said data extraction at the edges of federated systems are a concern. What did you mean by that?
Right. So once you start hosing stuff around the federated system, it is who knows where on what server. Well, you may know who's in the federated system, but it's gone from your control. Now that probably doesn't matter if you're just, chit-chatting between a group of people. But once it moves to anything less trivial than that, it actually has some implications. This is one of the things I'm working with Gabo on his sort of seed system, is that trying to understand the modern equivalence of sort of copyright control within a federated system. Because if you're an organization, so you're a regional government or something, and you're sharing between the departments, you want to have some sense of where that information's going. If it's just everywhere, that's actually a genuine problem, because someone that only has to share it with somebody else and it's gone, because you can never get it back. So you could say, okay, well, if you do that, only ever use a client-server system, and you've got much more lockdown.
Yeah, but Mark,
that's a rather draconian approach to it. But that's the answer to your question.
Okay, no, that's a fair point. But of course, if you distribute your thoughts as a PDF, it's because the term federated system, I think, is a very specific case and worthwhile and interesting. But this may not be federated. This is simply, I said something. Do you want a piece of it? Tom.
Yeah, as usual, I'm going to throw a wrench into this a little bit. So I want to turn this on its head, though, because I'm hearing a theme here, and I'm just sort of listening to what everybody else's comments are. And one of the things that I see is a constant conversation among the more technical mindset people, as I was referring to earlier, is this need to adapt to the machine as opposed to adapting the machine to the human, which is something obviously that is at the core of Doug Engelbart's thinking, that if we're going to augment, he didn't say augment machine intelligence, he said augment human intelligence, and that's significant, right? But the interesting thing is, I think AI starts to flip that on its head, and the easiness or the simplicity of creating basic applications is no longer the issue. It's exactly the kind of things that Mark is referring to, but also everybody else has referred to at some level, and that is system design. And to be able to step back and think at that level is hard. I mean, when I say system design, I mean systems upon systems design, not just the system within the application, but as Eric was saying, all of these other systems that are tangential to those systems, which some companies and some institutions, depending on the system you're in, will find essential, right? And others may find trivial, right, for the same reason. But that I think is the future. And I mean, I put links to it in there. I wrote a thing about a year ago saying, we're entering what a true maker world. Maker spaces are cool, but there are barriers to entry. If you're going to use computer, God, I can't remember the word now. Computer-driven machines, you have to know how to use the design software. You have to be fluent in AutoCAD or other sorts of things. Well, with AI, you don't anymore. In order to create applications. The point of generating code is to create applications. The point of creating applications is not to generate code. It's to do something useful, right? So code is just a means to an end there. And so that's the that's the low level technical stuff, the foundational level, let me say it that way, that AI can safely take over. Now, what I've been working on in the last few weeks that I've sort of, been just cogitating on is, to what extent can we use the machine to upgrade the human, and how hard is that? And that means that, can we take ordinary coders and turn them into systems designers? And how do we get to that point? So it's not just about, wow, I just wrote a cool app, which you did. But how does that integrate into the needs of my personal system, personal environment, or to the needs of my group's environment, whatever that group may be, company, classroom, institution, whatever you want to call it. And so that, I think, is that's the real challenge here. And these questions all seem to be asking the same thing, though, is that, wow, this is great, but how does it fit in here? How does it fit in here? How does it connect to this? How does it connect to this? Well, for one thing, maybe you can help get AI to start brainstorming that with you, but you're going to have to ultimately think about what that looks like, and that's why we all have to become system designers.
I agree with you, Tom, but I'm a little surprised at the timing of your comments, because that's exactly what this is. It's a system design. This is an approach, a philosophy, a document format, an approach to sharing, an implementation. And one thing I was really hoping, and I think we can get to, is there are all these yes ands. No one has said yes but all these yes ands. And that's one thing, but let me ask you, are you guys also, hang on, I'm going to share again. Okay. Okay, just so you guys can see how it works in Xcode. Mark or someone else, Mark, because you're specifically an expert, or someone else, think of a view of documents like this or communications that might be useful, either from your own experience or from Doug or Ted. Just think of one.
Sorry, I don't use Xcode. I'm not a programmer.
No, that's not what I asked you to do. I didn't ask you to use Xcode. I'm going to show you something in Xcode. What I want you to do in normal human language, to say to me, because, and this is what I'm blown away by. Here on the left, all these views, which are modular. If you now tell me a view, like this is a connected thing, right? If you tell me just...
Oh, okay, I have an idea.
Yeah.
I'd like a view that tells me how much has been changed from the previous superseded version. So was it a 10% change, or was 80% of it changed?
And after that, I've got one as well for you. So now I'm up with the hunt.
So this then should be shown when you're reading a superseded version, right?
Right. Here's how much the new version changed.
Okay, so I just wrote, please make a view which tells me how much has, make a button, not a view, because a view would be in a different area. Can you do that? The team is watching you live. No.
Way to make it feel insecure.
Exactly right. So this is the absolute madness of this. So that's how I've been coding. That's the level of dialogue, right? I'm not a programmer, and so all of this.
The human thing where you get tell them I'm watching, and you kind of have a human we anthropomorphize everything.
Yeah. But look at what it's
you're actually it triggers it in useful ways to do things, and you don't need to phrase it exactly that way to get those responses. But it's far easier for us to do it and pretend.
Look at.
So Fred,
I'm sorry for talking over you both, but please talk. Yeah. But just have a look at the responses of how it's saying what it understood and what it's going to do. It's amazing. Please continue, Peter, and then Mark, because Peter, I didn't hear everything. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. Keep going on with what you're doing, because you're doing what the vibe coding is the term for it. Although it's a lot more than that. I think it's coding with massive assistance, but we anthropomorphize everything. I mean, we give ships names and the software. You're talking to it as though you're talking to a program, and that's perfectly legit way of doing it. But if you actually were to figure out the keywords, you can get more succinct, and you become like a Mentat in Dune or something like that, where you talk shorthand to the computers.
Yeah,
computers are illegal. Did you hear about the Butlerian Jihad?
Humans are computers.
I've definitely noticed it's one of the reasons.
So it's interesting to see that people are watching. Okay, does it care? Do you think it cares? Well, it doesn't. It has no care.
It'll may not care.
Different style of prompts for you.
It may not care in a human way, but it may, as you said, prompt or deal with it in a different way, maybe more succinct or flamboyant, because it does know about today's meeting. Right, so here it's done all kinds of fun. Because when I asked for this button, I didn't explicitly say how it should go and do the maths to compare those two. So we're going to have to test it and see how rubbish it is. And then I look very much forward to Mark's maybe more traditional view rather than button in there. Both are interesting. Right. Now the button in the header document, I'll put it. Yeah, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, I just say yes. It is a view suggestion. So when you get while this is running, it's an observation actually prompted by what Peter's saying. One of the things I found is I played around with Claude Code a lot, and it's sort of fine. But I realized I wasn't doing a coding problem, and actually it was getting in the way because I ended up, in a sense, trying to turn a non-coding problem into a coding perspective, which was not useful at all. I'll keep talking. I'm going to get the door, and as a result, I couldn't get all I need.
We lost him, didn't we?
Yeah, he's definitely breaking up.
Cut out. I do apologize. Of course,
Mark, you
of course, the
completely cut
delivery
out.
arrives when I'm at the door. Right. Okay.
You broke up as you were walking away.
Okay. Sorry. The gist is that I find if I go into Claude Chat, I get a much more sensible conversation out of it, and I tend to. The other thing is when it makes a mistake, which we all do, I deliberately stop and ask it the nature, what it understands of the nature of the mistake it makes. Not you've been a bad person, not anthropomorphize. You're saying good, bad. So you did that thing. You did this thing which I wouldn't expect a human to do. What was the causal nature of that? And actually, it's quite articulate, and it will come back. It's what's really good because it's really good at exposing the flaws in the structure.
Yes.
So one of the things that's really interesting is it can't do parallel context like a human mind can. So when you ask it about a subject, what you don't see if you do it as a code interface, it just runs off and does a lot of basically XY comparisons.
Mark, have a look at this.
At the things needed. Yep.
This is the Peter button. What changed?
Yep.
Let's see if it works. Okay, so it's in a pop-up, so we probably want it more. But it did find one paragraph edited. So this is when, we would iterate and say, on...
Okay, that comes close, but I wanted to know what percent of the document changed. So saying one paragraph edited on a one paragraph document would be different than one paragraph edited out of a 50-page paper.
Yeah, and I'm only going to do this one more because we're going to go to Mark. But the point is, you can keep asking and keep telling and keep changing. But for instance, the little icon after the link for the, whether it's a stretch text or whatever it is, was below. No, I wanted it here, right? So you just keep telling it. So similar here. Now it's trying to change the size of the dialogue, which is very minor. Also add 1%. But Peter, you should absolutely get this code, put it in your own Xcode, and do a proper Peter change view. And if it doesn't work, that's also a learning experience, right? And hopefully soon we will have it working. And Mark, do you want to describe to me what your view would be?
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, show me a view or a map of all the agreement connections.
Agreements. We have disagreements.
Agreements. So you can choose that once to load out. But what I want to see, basically, I want to see the relationship map of all the notes that were in agreement.
The problem is...
one of the things... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I can't give you this build unless you build it yourself because of the beta nonsense, but please continue.
Oh, no, I understand that. No, I was just trying to, you said what's something you might like to do. And so here's the thing that we sort of know, this is a known kind of thing to do. It's interesting to see without giving it too much of a steer as to what it does. So, of course, within the corpus of all the notes, it won't be one network because not everything is connected. So does it choose to show you all the maps or just one map?
But you can tell,
so it's an interesting...
Tell it that, right? You should probably at least be allowed to.
Yes, but it's also really, I found to be really useful is to allow it to have a chance on its own to see what it thinks, because that's really instructive as well, because it shows you where, I don't bias is the wrong word perhaps, but it shows you where it's sort of guess as to what the thing is. Sometimes it's just marvelously good. Other times it's outright bonkers, which is always then a cause for another conversation. So, okay, so what caused you to think that was, an ideal solution for this?
Mark,
and that then again is instructive in use of the AI.
Yes. Yeah, but one thing that is really important here is I'm not trying to big up the AI analysis part. What I'm trying to big up is the AI in building a thing that is no longer AI. right? So your questions, Mark, and concerns are completely valid, and is exactly what we should do while making these things. But the key thing is, if it does it wrong, it's of course up to us to check and then change it. Or if we get to a point where it just cannot do it with the data or the logic, delete it. But look how quickly it was to change this. And it says +7 words. That's what it did. But I haven't asked it for more, of course. And also, did you see what it says earlier up here? It said, because you're doing this live, let me make sure it looks really good. Right? But okay, so Mark,
but that's
please.
really good. I mean, that's a very good example of the kind of thing it does really well. So a little validator I shared with you. What was very impressive is that although the coding was probably actually quite a small percentage of the problem that was actually being solved, which was essentially a linter for naive users who've been forced to use LaTeX to submit a paper, so that at least when they open their paper, they don't get 400 formatting results just for the BibTeX alone. But all the sort of coloring and the layout and the font, all that was done by Claude, and I didn't touch it because, frankly, it was good enough. But what was really interesting is I had that epiphany happen several times. We're working on something with Claude and said, well, okay, so what model are you working off? It says, and it's like the two drunks in the car saying, I thought you were driving. And when we actually burrowed down to the bottom, so actually it was this document, which turned out to be actually months of my work doing the underlying logic, which it then turned it very usefully and very, reasonably succinctly, down to the fact that we even got the Creative Commons ident is done as SVG. So that's not an external file either. So it's really, really nice. And it does that sort of thing really well. But you have to remember, it's read a lot more software manuals than you have.
Yeah, exactly.
And basically, and its brain cycle speed is much faster than yours. So it is wondrous to see, but also you should hold the fact that if it didn't happen, you should be really concerned, because you ought to expect it to do this sort of thing, because that for it is pretty trivial. That's not knowledge,
right.
And it will tell you it doesn't. It's just a probability matrix, word followed by word followed by word, and it claws its way through.
Yes. But the thing is, probability and AI and all of that is interesting, and there's lots of discussions around AI. But here we have the potential of a system that we can use instead of email or Slack or all of those guys, right? That we can have fun with. We can implement old hypertext ideas, new ideas, whatever. The excitement here, I think, is more, let's create what we think we can and just run with it. I mean, it's like the most incredible toy ever, right? How many of you have Xcode, by the way? Tom?
I have it installed because things ask for it, but I don't use it.
Okay. Mark, Peter? Peter Wasilko has, right?
Yeah, the same.
I don't use it much.
An older version. I used to use it for work, but no longer. But get back to it.
Because basically everything I do is for the web. So since I'm not using any of Apple's frameworks, I don't even bother getting into Xcode.
So
Xcode, what languages does Xcode work with, by the way?
Well, it's Mac, so it's basically Swift libraries and Mac goodies.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm working mainly in Python these days. That's why I was asking.
Okay. Because this is in, unfortunately, oops, let's do it here. This is beta because it's for 27, as in macOS 27, which is really annoying. But it would be really fun if you guys could just install it, because, okay, anyone else have an idea for a view? And we don't have that many documents, which is really annoying. Say something really ridiculous, please.
Oh, can it give us a readability score?
No, because that's boring. That's just a.
What do you call exciting? I mean, that's the unguessable thing.
What I mean is, okay. No, I'm laughing here because we're at that kind of discussion. I mean, so here, it's beginning to do a graph for us, right? Which is just really wild. I don't even know how it works. I haven't bothered much with it. For me, it's an early test version. But it is, I do a lot of my thinking with the regular Claude, but these are not connected. They don't share knowledge. of me and my work. So I had the regular Claude make a document for this Claude so it understands my philosophy and research. So the way that this graph is made is based on my earlier work on what should be visible and all of that kind of stuff, right? So we can do all kinds of features, but and we even have AI insights and stuff like that. But it won't be much because we hardly have any because it's just me and fake tester accounts. But maybe a special hypertextual view or something like, or maybe names of the authors jumping up and down, or almost something silly.
Well, that was why I suggested, well, show us the agreement network.
Yeah,
you've got link types, so you've got links and you've got link types, so you have all the bits you need to make that.
I've got an idea. How about a view where any words that have high emotional impact get bolded? So it's just like plain neutral tech talk, and then you start to go into a rant saying, I really hate this about Apple. That sentence would immediately jump out and be put in bold. So it would stand out from the plain academic discourse around it. So I want to look for the emotional statements that might be inside of an otherwise dry document.
Okay.
And have them bold.
Yeah, that's super simple. Add a button on top of a published document to highlight positive boom. Yeah, that can be done. But what I really hope to do is get you the actual app. And so you can make your own module/views if you want. But also, if we just start like the discussion that Eric's a part of, having a discussion via this, use it like email. Then maybe we'll get to a threshold of categorically learning that this approach is absolute rubbish, and we can write an article about that. Or maybe we find some workflow of everybody owns the document that we share, because it's basically communication via PDF. That's what academics do. This is just more streamlined and no publisher and quicker. That's it.
But do academics? I just like to pick. So do academics converse by PDF? I'd like to use a convincing of that argument.
Citations.
Sorry?
That's what I mean. I mean citations. They cite each other.
Okay, but citations are not a facet of PDF. PDF is basically an encapsulation of paper, and citations go back to print. So you could send right to the person in Dusseldorf and get the book sent to you, 3 weeks later by first-class post.
No, you can't anymore because they aren't printed. PDF.
Well, indeed.
No, but Mark, what I'm saying is simply is that serious academics, they publish through paper or PDF or whatever, and the threading of the conversation is through basic citations.
But it's also, they've already moved beyond. I mean, if you look at the publishers now, sort of PDF, I think I would be very surprised if it becomes more than a copy of record quite quickly. You're already seeing people pivot to PDF, partly because it gives you accurate reflowable text. Because you don't want to read a 12-page, 2-column document on one of these.
You mean to HTML?
HTML, yeah.
But the problem with that, Mark, is first of all, it's not happening according to the ACM Library Board. The users don't want it in large numbers. And secondly, you still have the problem of local first. If it's HTML, it has to be hosted somewhere. You can't drag an HTML page anymore. You could in the old days onto a browser and it would render. It doesn't do that anymore.
In fairness, but be careful of your assumptions you're nesting there. You're just assuming a certain type of page design. But as you've, for instance, been showing with the origami text, if you build it, the thing about it's really interesting too. This is something Claude came back to, because I thought Claude would want to use Markdown, but Claude was very insistent that no, we did not want to use Markdown. Why? Because it's ambiguous. Whereas it understands the rules of HTML, and even if it only uses a part of it, it's much more robust than Markdown, which came as a surprise to me, because you would think now that Markdown is the cool place to be. But so it's fine for simple output, but actually for not structured information. And don't forget, and this is something we learned from Brandon when we look at the XR stuff, is that
let's not go on to. We're having a session on this. Let's not spend too much of the session saying why. right?
We're
For
not
those who
seeing
don't
why.
want
We're
to,
understanding what.
yeah, but there's a lot of talk of why not do HTML, and let's not do that today. Let's just have fun with this, and if it turns out it's not useful, it's not useful. While we're waiting on the build, Eric, please go ahead.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to ask it a philosophical question such as how would Ted Nelson's zigzag ideas, how could they enhance the presentation of this app?
Yeah, I'm happy to ask that question. It's already discussed potential of doing that because it's talked about transclusion, which I don't think it fully understands, but then hardly anyone does.
Yeah, well, just so people understand, zigzag is a multi-dimensional data structure, and you can rotate in different dimensions on the axes. And I'm thinking it could be useful for reducing clutter in 3D of your metadata. So just that thought's in my mind. I'm not sure how to take it forward yet.
I don't think anyone does. I think even Ted was kind of he kind of boosted that out there, and he got the implementation done, and it just didn't. It landed with a big thud because no one could figure out what it is.
Yeah, there
what
was
to
a
do with it.
paper from Southampton which classified zigzag in terms of a graph, a specific type of graph. So, yeah, I mean,
it's a graph theory stuff kind of pulled out of graph theory into Ted Nelson talk, with special terms and the negative, positive, the forward links and all that kind of stuff, just to make it confusing when it's graph theoretical stuff that's pretty well known, actually.
Right, but could that...
When I look at it, I see graph theoretical stuff that's more advanced than what he was positing.
Yeah, sure.
But it might be good to see what Claude come up with here, because Zigzag partitioned it into this next-gen hyperlink, the next-gen Ted Nelson, enfilade, whatever the hell it is.
Yep.
And so that'd be kind of cool to see where it goes with that, because a whole bunch of people jumped onto it. It became a thing. It's got it's like the Steve Jobs reality bubble, that kind of thing. Ted Nelson had the same kind of thing around him.
But let's just think in spatial computing, if you had that GZZ prototype in a spatial environment where you could have like sectors of your vision with different structures that you manipulate in different dimensions, and then you could rotate your swivel chair to other sectors. Just let's dream about that a little.
Yeah, there's a lot of good work to do there. And but I think you can create a 2D projection of that, a graph in a browser. It's something that would be useful to build, the multidimensional thing in 3D. Great, but let's do a 2D version and make it something that helps us understand what this network of documents. I don't think you have enough documents to make a good hypertext thing here with relationships. I don't know the amount of test documents there so I'm not sure what Claude would come up with if you'd ask it.
Okay, just throwing it out.
Use a zigzag.
So, guys, we don't have that much time left, but let's see if we can, and Tom, you're obviously next, but transition away from why. So what I've shown you is literally wet clay. This is Sumerian cuneiform, right? What the heck do we want it to do? What are your dreams of a communication medium where you make a statement, share it with colleagues and friends, and it can be annotated or not, it can have tags, it can have whatever or not. And then as you build up this conversation, you can look at it in useful ways. If you email me, since that's all we have now, before next session, and by the way, next Monday, I'm not sure, I may be traveling. It may not be possible, but very soon I'll try to build it. And if it turns out that this version is built on sand, it's not a problem. We build something else. But let's talk about dreams and ideas and not problems. Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a problem. I think this is an opportunity. But I think a lot of times as we're having these conversations, we're talking about things like citations and PDFs. Those are old paradigm touchstones.
Absolutely.
And so, for instance, that thing I just put in there about zigzag, I have a library with most of Ted Nelson's stuff in it. and I just ran a query against it, and I said, hey, what's zigzag? And it told me that. Is that correct or not? Maybe, maybe not. It's probably incomplete, but I also have links back to the original sources of that, right? And so, when we have these academic discussions, I mean, remember listservs? When we have these academic discussions, we're operating as if the extent of the conversation space is the other people's brains within the discussion. But what if we think about that in the larger sense of the other people's brains in the universe of having libraries of Ted Nelson stuff or Doug stuff or combinations of all of these sorts of things, which I have.
Yeah.
And the point I'm trying to make here is that the things that you see as anchors are not really anchors. They're anchors that are legacies of the old paradigm, which may be necessary at
What
some
do you
level.
mean? What do you mean by anchors?
Everything PDFs and citations are legacies of print media. You
No,
don't need a citation.
Citation is not a legacy of a print media. Citation just means to bring something forth. It's just a connection. It's just, this is
I
where I got
understand
it.
that, but I'm saying the written form of citations are a
Yeah,
legacy
of
of print
course,
media
of course.
because you needed to walk back to the original
Yeah,
source, wherever that
that's
might
why
be.
that's why we
Right.
need to change it. And I strongly agree that that's a priority for us. Of how do we deal with addressability? Absolutely.
And as Mark said, you would write to somebody in Germany, and they would send you a copy of their paper. If you could, that's sneakernet essentially. But we now have an access to a net that is infinitely pliable in a way that even the Tim Berners-Lee internet wasn't, because it's a network of ideas that we can reconstruct on our own. And in a conversation space like this, or the document you're saying, can be used to connect with other people's libraries, to share, right?
Yes.
So, and so this changes the landscape. And I think one of the things that we have to be thinking about as we're building these things is, to what extent can we ask hard questions about, is this landscape even appropriate anymore? I mean, there's some aspects of it that will be. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying throw out the baby with the bathwater, but I am saying, we're constantly dragging along these boat anchors based on our own experience and time learning that don't necessarily apply anymore.
No, absolutely, 100%. That's part of what we need to redo. Mark.
A quick one on Zigzag. If you can find, my old supervisor, Les Carr, if you can find an Internet Archive version of his university pages, he had the London subway network in Zigzag. And it was actually quite cool, because you could explore Zigzag, something that's kind of mind-bending, in a paradigm that you understood, which was moving your way around the subway. So that is quite interesting. One of the things that struck me, I mean, when I was studying and looking at Zigzag, is one of the problems also is that it's a really cool idea, but how do you build stuff for it? So one of the problems is actually putting the information into it. So it is interesting, and I don't know, somebody's comment earlier is, if you think about the n-dimensional sort of number space of an LLM, well, isn't that a sort of n-dimensional zigzag? So it's another way of looking at it. So are we now in some weird non-Euclidean sort of paradigm of moving through space? And then the other thing was, quickly following on really what from Tom was saying, is that another thing that's remarkably legacy is something that's very trendy at the moment is block level addressing. That doesn't really have I haven't found a sort of the canonical description of that. Everyone talks about it, and we seem to roughly know what it means, which normally means a paragraph or a line of text. But again, that's sort of print, isn't it? Because it goes back to a paragraph. And when an interesting thing that comes out of citations is people very quickly tend to go for the closest citation, mainly because that's older and it's very important in humanities. I want, sentence 4 of this version of that incunabula. But actually, a lot of our referencing is remarkably fluidly scoped. So if you actually look at the way sort of people are doing things, a lot of the provenance is a massive overload of stuff we don't need because actually it's way too tightly scoped. So people have pressed very hard on the provenance button because that's nice. You can code that. We've got blockchain, all kinds of cool, funky technology to do that. What we don't have is something that can do the wider thing. So no, I'm referring to that subject, or I'm referring to all editions of that book, or I'm referring to that whole conference. That still is actually much harder to do, but it still strikes me as absolutely part of the sort of citational linking we want. And actually, there's sort of an interesting idea that comes out of this sort of mention of zigzag. This idea, well, let's blow up all the dimensions. Is you're almost drawing a circle around a bit of space and saying that bit there. And I'll stop there. Peter.
Okay.
Sorry, I just had to get. Yes, Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I have an idea for a higher level question to ask Claude. Let's ask Claude, what would it look like if NLS Augment and Zigzag had a love child?
I did ask Claude a similar question. What would it take? This is based on Tom last week. I asked it, what would it take to make NLS now? But Peter, I think that's a good idea. You should do that. Now, Peter, it did do your function, but it relied on the Apple's on-demand sentiment analysis, which is just medium. So it did it, but not in a really big way. But now going forward, what actual things? So we're really addressing Eric's question here. Let's say that, okay, who will critically review all the AI output? With all respect, Eric, for this particular work, I find that not a pertinent thing, because I'm not really talking about adding AI analysis to the app necessarily. What I'm talking about is having the AI build a non-AI system. So the AI really becomes like a junior programmer. Well, maybe not even junior. So if we take Eric's starting question of, and we added this thing, let's assume that I can build this thing and get it to you guys. Anybody here not use a Mac? Okay. So Peter, you would have to build your own client, obviously. But I'm sure there's a Claude Code who could do that with you. Because obviously this Claude would be able to give all the specifications and answer all the questions. What would we actually want to be able to do? I'm going to walk through a bit and you're going to interrupt me whenever you want to. So you have a point you want to make to the group, and it's not necessarily a published article, something you would normally send in a group email. And how do you want that to be? Right now, it's subject and body. There's no other information, right? But would you want to say it's up for comment, or would you like to say this is a statement I'm making to the world? Does that matter to you? Maybe not, right? Do you want to say it's for attention to people, or do you just want it to go to the community? These are options you should have. And then when you receive one of these, through whatever means, you should have options for how to read it by itself. And also whether you want to read it at all. Maybe it's someone you muted because they talk too much rubbish. Or maybe it's someone you think is super important, or someone who said it's for your attention. All of these things should be thought about. But once you get past the writing a card, as we might call it, and reading a card, then we're getting into more interesting things of, oh, damn, I've been in this community for 6 months now, and I have 1,000 messages. How do we want to go through them? We can actually experiment with that now.
One of the things that I've been doing recently that's kind of interesting is actually using the AI to analyze the messages themselves. In other words, look for patterns and things like that. In the terms of my students, what I'm trying to do is measure what level of learning they've achieved in their conversations with the AI.
Yeah. But Tom, okay, I just think we need to scope the AI really carefully, because there's absolutely, with the system, even as it stands today, in terms of programming, it's trivial to add a view that says, exactly that. That can be done. But in terms of things that aren't based on, I want to view where the AI does this. Are there other views? Like we want to see a map of agreements. Do we want to see it 2D or 3D? Do we want to see flow? Do we want to see it person-based? Or like Mark was talking about, subject, like hypertext as a general thing. That's interesting.
Be kind of fun to send in the chat logs from the Zoom sessions.
That is why I have added AI on behalf of me. What you say is perfectly well, Tom. So what we should probably do is find a way whereby all of you are known entities. So when it comes across what we will call a chat transcript, it should ascribe each bit you say to you rather than AI or me. That's a good. Okay, let me see if I can begin.
Fred, it does sound, from what you were saying earlier, we're saying look at the relationships and things, so it does keep spiraling back towards some of the ideas that came out of spatial hypertext, which
yes,
I'm surprised actually haven't been more used in XR, which seems a logical place to do it. But so one of the things, because paper, one of the reasons I've been thinking about several tools for thought, a lot of the moments of paper I'm doing is that, and it turns out that it's the king's new suit of clothes. Tools of thought has become a marketing term that's generally understood but doesn't actually describe anything. And there are lots of things that are actually on a decreasing cone around a very Taylorist Western perception of efficiency in organization. And what they're all talking about is exactly the opposite, wanting to find serendipity and sort of non-linear relationships between things. So there are whole parts of the world whose methods of notation and things we haven't even sort of looked into because of the accident of birth of stuff basically coming out of the post-war boom and DARPA and everything. There is a link, there is a link in the two arms of structure, sort of slightly underneath it. But it is interesting, just that dichotomy that all the time, well, the one thing that keeps coming out is what people describe themselves wanting with these thinking tools and what they build are sort of, in a sense, increasingly different in where they're going, because, they're built to very different things. So a really interesting thing might be to ask Claude to make you something on maybe one of the Chinese or Japanese noting systems that have very different ideas about flow and organization and temporal and the temporal axis.
That's also a very good question. If you can, please read what I'm writing here. What do you think? Should I ask it this? This is about the transcript, of course. Let me see what it says. This is a question, not a command for it to build anything. Looking at different notation systems, Mark, is absolutely a very interesting idea. And I do encourage all of you, if you want to, send me an email with a view or a thing, and I will try to do it. In fact, maybe I should even film a video of it happening, and then you can see if you like it, the way it works.
I mean, the most impressive thing I've seen recently in those sort of regards is someone who, German philosophy professor in Jena, he actually speaks quite good English, but he thinks it's not good. So he dictates to, I think it's Vibe Whisper or whatever it's called, one of these transcript things. He speaks in German to that, which speaks to Claude, which translates it and says, "Do you understand?" He reads it back in English, then commits it. And he used that, despite him definitely being someone who is not of a coding or technical background, as I say, he was a philosophy professor, and he looked at, as it happened, Tinderbox, and he, in very short order, had a Node website that showed 3 visualizations plus the selected note, all in one UI. And I thought, that's amazing. The impressive part was that the the hyperbolic view, the sort of network link layout, and the map had been done by Claude, basically parsing pictures from the screen, because of course it can't see, and it can't conceive what it sees. What it tells you it does is it looks for spaces and it uses reasoning. So, but apart from reading text, which doesn't really help you when you're trying to understand what a picture means. So in the way we might illustrate a book to say, picture, and we think, oh, that explains it. Claude can't really use that meaningfully, Claude or Gemini or whoever, because it can't see. It can find there's a blob in the top left-hand corner and a blob in the bottom right-hand corner, but it doesn't have the same, doesn't get the same cognition as we do from that. So that bit's really amazing. I mean, it really is mind-blowing that without having the same sense of understanding of the visuals we do, it could take essentially a very visual view and recreate it functionally. That did make me sit up.
Yeah, that's very cool. I remember you told me that story. It's very impressive. So it's going to try to do this now, and it's building it. And then I'm going to say, here's an actual example data. Try to use that. So let's see what we get. Because importing is obviously as important as exporting, because we can't expect everyone to write. Even if all of us decided to use this as our primary messaging app, we can't expect everybody to sit down and write. So it can already import Markdown and Word and, of course, Author. So let's see what it says now. There is, of course, in the system, a kind of a contact list. So you can sort by author and so on. So that should probably work across here as well. If we have one Peter Demetrius, we have one Peter Demetrius. I'm looking here, Peter, while this is happening on your comment from Claude, the global workspace and all of that. I think Eric emailed about local first. And I think in today's over-distributed environment, that's a really important notion.
So I brought up in chat the idea of each of us curating our personal selection of documents locally and then using technology to replicate it to the peer-to-peer to each other. And then maybe there's a way we can find some common ground for future discussions from that. But I like the liquid author format, that just the functionality that author provides, the marking of text and the concept map. So if we could align on a concept map for a specific topic, maybe that's a starting point.
Thank you. This is supposed to also support, by the way, these two lines here, origami, do, and format, that means it's updating its own documentation at the same time. So that's clickable from within the app. The author model, I'm glad you like it, but I think it's too hacked together over time. I think we have an opportunity to do something cleaner here. This definitely needs to store spatial data. The way I think we should store images, by the way, is by mentions in the text where there is an assumption of that they're either on a server or in the same folder, something like that. I'm not saying we have to decide now, but the main thing itself should be ridiculously simple, as it can be with spatial.
It's interesting what you said there, Fred, about the spatial thing, because having watched the sort of map and merge in Author over the years, I watched it actually claw back to something where, in reality, in the sense, everyone started from a different place, but actually just letting anything in the document be an object, potentially. In other words, it has the capability to be something in the space. You decide what you want to see, and you can hide it or show it or whatever, rather than, in a sense, having to add things specifically, because what tends to happen is you then have a sort of divide between the things that are in map and out, which is totally unintentional, but then makes it difficult to see the whole, because having worked with a similar sort of map in a different application, one of the real Joyce, and the thing that everyone says about using it is, no, you just look at the stuff you need to look at. So it's everything in a sense is just an object within the system.
You guys have given me an opportunity to show you what I'm most excited about outside of this coding, and that is in here, in the map, in the definition, you can now do this. So it's a selected text in the term. If you now do Command D or define, it makes a new dialog for it. I'm just writing that as a small thing, right? It makes me so excited to have this because in my discussions with Claude has pointed out that these knowledge maps are useful for their connections, just like you've all been saying, not for the nodes so much. So therefore, you really shouldn't be able to put something on the map without it being connected. So by having the ability to, while you are writing, oh, electronic literature, okay, I should define that.
Why does Claude say you shouldn't put something on the map without it being linked? I'd be interested to see the justification of that.
It was saying other things, but what it meant was the linking. This is primarily for students and learning. The active linking to see connections is an important part of the process. Now, of course, spatial hypertext would lose things, and the position itself is valued. No question about that. So this is just an additional layer where I made it so easy. So you come across XR and you realize I haven't actually defined that. Done, right? I've only now seen it. It's a new build today. It excites the heck out of me because if you can add things easily, you can also discard things you don't need easily because the overhead and the cost is so small. So that's kind of cool. Right. Let's go back and
in answer to Mark's question and also what you were saying, Frodo, I think that the use case is different. So if you're using this as a teaching tool, forcing the students to put connections to the links, that actually makes sense. If you're using it as a brainstorming tool with the rest of you guys, sometimes I may want to throw something out that I said, I think this has something to do with it, but I can't figure it out. I need Frodo to tell me how to do that or where that connection is, or I need Peter or somebody else to tell me where that connection is. And so that, in that sense, you should be able to do it. So you should probably have two modes, a teaching mode and a thinking mode would be my suggestion. Have we lost Frodo?
I had to get water, but I could still hear you through the you're absolutely right. But do you remember
there's a feature for you to add, a toggle that says thinking mode or teaching mode?
Well, this is a hugely important topic, Tom, because first of all, when they made the Mac, one of the key points of the mantra was no modes, had to be modeless, right? But the human brain has modes itself. So what I'm trying to do is give you the means to do either, and then to provide kind of the framing where you will use this or that tool. But let's see what's going on with this update here, because I said it's done the import of the transcripts. I gave it a real transcript. And now it's going to go through that and analyze how we talk to each other. And then maybe we can have it as an example. Because one of the things in the community we've been fighting over, not against each other, but as an issue over the many years is it Mark Anderson or is it M. Anderson or is it Mark Rawlinson Anderson? Is it the ORCID ID? Who, what represents the person? And there are many things around it. But if we can get to a functional point, is it Doug Engelbart, D. Engelbart, Douglas, Carl Engelbart, blah, blah, blah. If we can see that person in multiple places, if we can now have a means through which in our discussion here, which is happy in public, we can easily distribute and distinguish rather what Eric has said, that's pretty cool. Because then that can go into other views.
I mean, the challenge in the last seems to me the disconnection between the human relationship, where we just map instantly in our mind between, M blogs and D blogs and all this sort of thing, and the different versions of a name. And software has an ability to do the same because it's hard-edged. It can't guess in the same way. So you end up with things like an ID. You end up basically with a global ID underneath, because you can't escape that, because that's the only way the system can know that this thing is the same as that thing. And then it can have a whole cluster of metadata hanging off it. And that's fine for a system designer, but humans don't really roll that way. They don't want to think of it in those terms. So I think that's the essential sort of challenge in the middle of that. So we have an answer at both ends. What we don't have is a thing that seems to neatly connect in a way that we find comfortable to use.
We do. I hope. I think. What I think we can do is in an address book, normal computer address book, you can say aliases and types of things. Right? I think we should just use that. And here, what I think we should do is, if I come across now Tom Hames as a speaker in a transcript, I want to be able to control click or whatever, and it doesn't know who that is, to get a dialogue to say who he is. And that is a saved contact in my knowledge base. So if he publishes a document in the future, it's Tom Hames. Now, he can mess it up and change the way he writes his name or something. And then, just like briefly as a human, like you say, Mark, that should be immediate. Okay, hang on. We're running it. So let's do file, import. So we go, I think it's transcripts. Okay. Has it figured out who's who? Let me see what it said. Let me see. It doesn't look like it's done anything useful. Let me see. I'm going to give it a bit of a screenshot. I can't see how. Actually, can I control click on them? Got to add the please, right, everyone? So screenshot. See what it says. Because it's made some choices. Like I don't really reply here. It's up here. Control click, export or delete. Well, that's okay. Here's. Anyway, the principle we all know, and I just thoroughly encourage you to have fun with this. Mark, do you know my old app, Lisa? So
Don't think
anybody? So. Okay, so Lisa, Liquid Information Speaking Assistant, it speaks with a real human voice when you get mail. So I made that 15, 20 years ago. It's a really nice app because it's a sweet voice. It's a human voice. And let me see here. It redid it. Just by looking at, I gave it the old, hang on. That's weird. I guess it's by, so I can run it and it just works. Well, you can't hear anything. Just while we're waiting for that to load.
Is this a simulation of the Lisa computer?
Test announcement.
You have a message from a friend.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
So the way it works is contacts. So under Mark, I call him a fellow student. Why not, right? Mark, would you mind sending me an email, please? The whole point, this was recoded with Claude, and it uses those, because those voices are split and they're randomized because there's more than one recording. All these little niceties, and it fully worked. See, it's trying to work on the issue.
Oh. Right, let me just send that. So having a really interesting experience when the sorry.
No, it was my fault. I turned it up because of the announcement. Please go on.
So I'm dyspraxic writer and a dyslexic reader, so I can't spot my fingers don't type what my brain sends, and I can't read the mistakes that I then make, which is interesting and embarrassing. But I use the text expander a lot, and just in about the last week or so, it just keeps phasing out and phasing in when it decides to do, and it's made me realize just how many expansions I use, because they've actually become the more convenient muscle memory. But it's also a real reminder about technology failure. So it just slices you off at the knees, because all the things that you suddenly used to do in seconds you now can't do.
That's happened to me as the Google. I use swipe texting. You move your finger across the keyboard and it types. And it used to guess really well. Apparently, Google upgraded their AI, or it's not personalized enough. Now it misreads 20% of what I type in is wrong, where it used to get it right. Now, whether my fingers aren't tracking as close or it's nearness, it picks words based on, you're between the E and the R, but there's a word here, so it picks the right word. It's picking the wrong words more often than it used to. And I think it's the AI stuff kind of and shittifying it a bit, I guess.
Same
what used to
problem
work well does not work as well now.
The same problem I'm having with this speech to calendar and notes thing that I built last week, because the AI is much better, Siri is improved. It tries to be too clever. So it doesn't necessarily go to my app, it goes to the Notes app. So that's not what I asked for. So yeah, there are more layers, and that's why I think it's very, very important to control where the AI has access, because otherwise it's just not always brilliant. Okay.
We've all seen the AI take over the house and lock us in and all that kind of stuff. That takes over your laptop and purchases more credits.
Just doesn't seem to do it. Speakers row? Where's the speakers row?
It's hallucinating things it didn't write yet. It's always amazing up until it isn't, but and then you work around it. So it's it's kind of a bendy screwdriver. It's a screwdriver or a hammer, a screwdriver/hammer that works, but sometimes it bends the wrong way and doesn't do what you want. But drive it right, and it does some wonderful things.
Maybe it simply doesn't know who's there. Okay, let's see what it says now, because this is a good example of what the heck. Okay, so let me import another one. Okay, once it stops spinning, I will launch the build, and then I will import a different transcript. Or is it doing it for me because it got mad at me now? I think it got mad at me.
They are anthropomorphizing the
Oh my gosh,
tools.
it did it.
That-
So add Tom Hames to people. You want an affiliation, Tom? You don't have an ORCID ID. Do you have an ORCID ID in America Land? Of course you do, maybe.
I might. I have no idea what it is.
So
I have published scholarly articles, so it's probably out there.
You have to ask for it. It's free. Anyone can get one. And the concept behind it is because people have suddenly realized that academics happen to move around unless they're tenured. So your email, the one, that paper you wrote as a bright young student, is no longer the email address you have anymore. But you might have gone on to do great things, and you might now be working over there. So the idea is that now you just give someone the ORCID, and that basically is, again, it's your GUID. Primarily within academic space, but frankly, it go wider. I assume it's probably used through certainly technical parts of industry and things. When
you say GUID, when you see GUID, I think flashback from my Georgetown University ID card.
Yeah.
But so it doesn't automatically assign upon publication.
Oh no. You have to go get one.
Okay.
Because there are X billion people in the world, and there's no point in minting them for people who don't need them. Is probably one reason. But you can just go. You can go now. Go to ORCID, sign yourself up, and then you have something that is basically yours. Until they run out of numbers or something.
When I added Peter's ORCID search found use, it added his affiliation. So it could have more stuff, but at least we have that. So now,
and that's about all I have in there. I don't have a lot of things in my ORCID, but some affiliations.
Yeah.
I don't think my IBM was there even anymore.
So this one now is considered just a no, you're not in here yet. So it's a draft. So at least if I now export this, then I'm going to call it meeting, right? And then it'll show up here. Oh, this is nice. Did you see that? So I click on Tom Hames. It says what he showed in meetings, and on the left it will show his documents. So this is the beginning of an infrastructure of holy moly, right? But we got to design the holy.
What does it actually give you? I mean, it gives you a result. You ask something, you get a result. But the question is genuine. It says, apart from a result and the excitement of getting a result, what's it moving you towards?
Mark, this is funny coming from you because you know the value of that question better than anyone. In order to have stuff, you need to have the computer know what stuff is. So an important part of that is for the computer to know who said what. And once you have that, then you can do a lot of the AI views where, has Peter Wasilko been particularly negative in his comments or whatever the heck you might want. That becomes possible because he becomes an identifiable source. It also becomes fun when we look at this, and these aren't really here. We can do graphs that aren't just for visual, excitement. It could actually be designed. We can specify design of, I want to navigate all of this based on everything that people agreed with Tom Hames, because that's important to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
All I know is that for really zero cost, we can start playing. This is a toy.
No, I mean, it's right. It's interesting here. So actually, it's nothing to do with what's on screen. It's also to do with the metadata behind and the real genuine challenge of actually creating the right amount of metadata, because you can correct all sorts of things, but normally most of the countable things aren't that useful. And the things that you actually want to record are quite difficult to get. So there's a useful point here that AI may be pulling out some of those harder to get bits that to date often were literally human labor, because you just had to read the wretched thing and extract it yourself. So that does seem something useful there.
Yeah,
Because sorry, go ahead.
No, Mark, you were.
All right. Just to finish the comment was to say that, because that seems to be the genuine problem with a lot of our idea of rich systems now, is they rest on a concept of sort of pervasive metadata that just isn't there, and we put very little effort into actually building systems that allow us to actually effectively collect the metadata we want in order to do the things we want. So, this is, I think, interesting in that regard, because if it gets us something, so the fact that you can press on a name and get something is less interesting to me than the fact that, but what I can really do is that the anchor, the sort of the pretty bit on the screen, it's more the fact that the anchor that is now the ID Tom Hames in the system will allow me to go and find all his stuff to stick into some query I want to do. So that is, that's good. That's useful.
So, thank you. One thing with this really cool thing of having a test account is that if I now turn on a test account, you see this document, this super simple thing that I published, changes. Right? If it's mine, I can supersede it, follow it up, use it, or retract it, blah, 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 right? If I make it a test account, it changes to having different ways to reply to it. That didn't update. I remember the first time I saw Macintosh. I'm sure you all do as well. And the potential and the emotion was much bigger than the capability, right? There was this 9-inch glowing screen of knowledge, a keyboard and a mouse, extremely limited. I'm really thinking now of, if you do escape, so it becomes full screen reading, right? Very, very simple. Thank you, Tom. I really can imagine that something like this would be for Mark to write a statement that is important to him to share with us. Like, if we go here to, Eric. So he has written really lovely things. I mean, look at this. That is not a short email. And he's written, hi all of this stuff. I could imagine this would be, I think, be better suited really do whatever the heck he wants with this. Write it simply. We can make it a more full-featured word processor thing. Of course we can.
So what would you pull out? I mean, that's a good example you give. So what would you pull out? What sort of essentially classification are you looking to make in that email?
Yeah, thank you for. So Eric, why don't you tell us what the point was of you sending this?
Okay, so I had sent a previous email, and then the next day I'm wondering, am I communicating too much? I wanted to clarify my previous intentions. I didn't want to appear that I'm trying to push my point. And then I know that there was an interest in local first technology, so I just posted a few resources, and I suggested these 7 ideals as a way of evaluating whatever we build or whatever we're looking at, like what kind of apps out there have these 7 characteristics. It's not my ideals; they are the local first ideals in the Ink and Switch paper.
What I'm thinking about is probably, and Mark, I'm particularly grateful you asked that question, because an email with several things, this is probably not good to replicate. But to have one thing where Eric writes one thing, even if it's a list, then it becomes a useful thing to go back to.
But isn't there annotation? Because one of the challenges, I think, is again you're absolutely right in the idealized notion, but it goes back to the thing we spend an awful lot of time talking. I must have something that at any moment can capture this amazing thought I have. Turns out we often don't have many amazing thoughts, but we are totally encumbered by systems that are constantly monitoring in case we have one. And do you know at the moment of doing it what it is? So someone else on Reflection said that's really interesting. But it may not be necessarily interesting to everyone. It might be interesting to only you or a couple of people. And there's a genuine challenge in it. So I don't see that as some kind of a riposte or a degradation of what we're discussing, but there's a really genuine informational challenge in this, because the real answer to what we want is a lot more nuanced than we're able to get. And we tend to oversimplify the codification of it.
Yes.
And assume it breaks down into nice things like drop-down menus, and you have 3 choices in front of you. Well, no, we don't most of the time.
So that is exactly the questions I think we should be asking. I have the ability now to do those drop-down menus, but we as a community must decide if we should have those drop-down menus. And I know, of course, you mean that as an allusion to all interactions. Because I think I'm paraphrasing you, Mark. Some of our knowledge is worthwhile. We want to present it nicely. And for many of us, that means trying to get into a journal or a conference. Others are medium, and some of them are just stupid little things we write down. You may not want to publish those things, but let's say, for the sake of argument, you guys had this now and you wanted to give me ideas for views. These are all addressable, and the authors are all known. So it can be that if we build the right kind of viewing environments, I'm going to publish this, pretend it's me, then we should be able to just easily point to them. Because so very often, please tell me if you have had the same experience. You work on a project, all kinds of organization at the beginning. These are principles, these are goals, these are this, that, and the other. Gets filed away on a G drive or Google Drive or website or whatever, and it's dead. Can we do this so that we can refer to again and again these 7 ideals, or supersede them because we decided something is better, and have the system know that?
That's where I keep coming back to Zigzag. What can it do to organize the mess and structure it so we could just filter out and everything except the dimensions we're interested in at the moment? And I also posted a link in chat if you want to see another example of short voice notes. You can bring that up if you want.
By the way, you see this line connection here? This is parallel document, Ted Nelson style. I forgot that it suggested we build it. And this is the first time I've seen it. Right. Look, it even moves. And like Mark and me, we've been working with brilliant people, Adam Wern, Fabienne Benetou, and they can do this kind of stuff. They can do it in 3D, but they are humans. It takes time, effort, and patience for them to do it. And they should do it in a better way, but we can play around now.
What would be really cool is to see if you can extend that to do different scope link. Because one of the weaknesses, I remember playing, I actually used a Xanadu simulation the night before my first conference paper to Hypertext in 2017, set up in the hotel, and had the most horrendous experience, because what I realized with Xanadu is you couldn't make a typo. If you made a typo, you had to start with a completely new document. So, and I know the tech of then isn't the tech now, but this concept that this old-fashioned notion that it started from, that everything starts from something else, is actually way too rigorous for the way that we actually interconnect things. So in that nice thing you showed there, it'd be interesting to say, well, yeah, let's do that maybe to the whole of that section of something, or maybe to the whole of the post, and just see if that can be done. Because otherwise we're stuck with a past notion, and as sort of Tom said, we drag these things along with us because they seem to be pertinent, but in fact what they are is, they're just tokens of yesterday, dragged forward, and we're not reinterpreting and saying, are they actually useful anymore, or can we build a better representation of that now with the tools we have?
Okay, this is really important. Thank you. So a link can be this. It should also be able to be this, right? It should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had not really thought of that, but.
Well, also there was a thing that was an N-ary links. People talked. This is where you have a link that may have 7 endpoints.
So with Doug links, there was addressing and jumping, of course, right? Addressing can be done at different scales. The views should also be at different scale. Read what it's saying here, by the way. I'll copy this into our chat. Because this is just, I think, kind of mad. So yeah, connecting stuff is. I remember the very first time I met Vint Cerf, and we were talking about connections and stuff, and he used the term bound. He said that because we were in a restaurant, now him and I are bound by that restaurant. Right? So there are all these different intellectual and physical and mathematical and other ways of discernment. And the human brain is good at discernment, right? So if we can, we're working here within current whatever Mac OS interfaces allow us to do, but we can still do a lot.
What's really interesting there, Fred, is if you think about that, so human mind very happily could take that just notion of a space. When you try and then put that into your nice coded system, it all gets rather complicated, and you have to know where the box is and what's in or what's out and things. We're quite happy that we're inside the restaurant. We don't even know maybe how big the restaurant is, but we know we're in as opposed to out. And that seems to map much more neatly to something like XR space. I think where we got slightly derailed in our past look there was we got hung up on text and what you could see rather than the text that you could see rather than the objects you could see, because once you know what an object is, the fact is whether it has a label or you can read it or you just know what it is sort of becomes moot, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to understand the relationship. Is this within this bound or is it elsewhere? It doesn't matter if you can read the nth degree of detail, because you know it's there because you happen to know it's stored in the system, because it has that information, it can display itself in the way that you've asked it to. So it does seem that that's one way in which a more or less 2D space can actually be quite useful for informational things, because I think it's much easier to have basically have more fluid bounds than are difficult on essentially the flat screen, which in some way takes us back to the paper page or the stone tablet.
So what I think would be
flat surface.
So I think what would be very cool is if what you said now, Mark, when you get a transcript of this conversation in this system, because you said something of value, you should be able to select it, copy to site, make a new document, give it a heading if you want, save that. And that is also, of course, you can edit the heck out of it. Who cares, right? That will then be connected to when you said it here. But it will be as a published document, not a web page that someone forgot to link to. I think Claude misunderstood what you said about different scope links, but it's doing it now to show just the words in the document, which is one scope. Mm-hmm. But at least it's possible to work with these things.
Because I think we have a chicken egg problem too with this sort of scoping in that, because we don't have the tools that allow us to do variable scope linking, we never quite get to experience the problem. So in other words, we
do, because you jokingly earlier said about the pop-up buttons and stuff, right? This is the magic of modern traditional computers. Why not just have a context menu? You click on that link, you have an option to show, link to the whole darn thing. Show me the sentence. I don't think it's too much to ask a knowledge worker to get used to command clicking on things, or control clicking, I mean, and have options to do stuff.
Yeah.
Like they're learning it more and more. So we don't have the tools, but we can pretend we do, see how it works, and then see how it works again.
Because I mean, it's
Yes.
really interesting. You take most academic papers. How many of them, unless it's probably deep in the humanities, are more than a citation to the whole work? Very, very few. Which is an interesting thing to ponder on.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's lazy authors or because they, truth is probably most people haven't read half the things they cite. But that's fair, because often because citing does two things as well. Citing is often a sort of provenance chain, saying, no, the thing that I'm talking about is this thing, which is a known thing to exist. You're not saying any more about it, as opposed to if you were saying, no, on chapter 4, page X, it actually says this. Or the whole of the chapter, as opposed to maybe a sentence. So there are some quite different dynamics going on there, and you're right about, yes, you could have this as a pop-up link, but what I'm really saying is that you almost want a freer experience from that. I don't think we know really what the graduations are and the relevant importance of them. Because it's actually quite hard to experiment with them. And the difficulty is when we experiment with them, what we do is we make a system that we don't understand. So now you're trying to do a job you don't understand using a tool you don't understand. And that's nobody's fault. But it's this was going back to the thing about saying have federated systems and doing onboarding. Federated systems, bloody good idea. Trying to teach someone how to use one, really, really hard. And there is no sort of way. I don't know if there's an easy way to do that, but certainly doing something to surface and encourage experimentation with different scope of linking, and indeed things like one-to-one links. You might have a link that says, okay, this is about X, and X actually ends up pointing to 5 things about it, 5 papers, 5 books, whatever, 5 people. That are essentially what that represents to you. That's a really nice thing, because even if that's hard to do on our facsimile of a paper page, i.e. a screen now, the sort of our software system can do that. I mean, just a JSON or something on the hood, and it can roar away and get all that stuff, and then possibly bring it back in a sort of visual presentation of a form that we can understand. So rather than trying to read a whole wall of text, it might show these as different icons or different presentations, because what we want, what we're trying to get understanding, and often so some kind of a proxy for the thing you're looking at is much more useful than literally reading the text. It's something that academics and engineers and people learn to do. It's hard work, it's not fun, and it's great if you're good at it, and it's miserable for everybody else. But because you're doing that just to get to the point of saying, oh yes, that is this. Yeah. That's the thing I remember. Whereas often, some literally a proxy is probably the best word for it. Some shape, some color, some representation, some presentation will get you there far faster and with the same accuracy.
And we're way over time, and I greatly appreciate all of you today. Will you consider sending me? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to, if you send me a proposal for a view or any thought on this that you would have liked to have written in the system, I'm going to get Claude to make this a multi-account system, not just with me and a test. So whoever sends me something, I'll paste it in and put it in there as though you authored it in the system. I'm going to delete everything we have now because it's just rubbish. So if you send me 1 or 10 messages by Monday, it could be fun, and we could do things. By the way, the VR project is going very well, but we will talk about that at some other points. Do you think it's likely you will send me something? I mean, I hope you've seen that it is not a technical thing. I know you're all technical people, but it can be like in the movie So-and-so, the little boy did that, right? It can be that simple, or it can be, I really need these data points plotted in such a way, whatever it is. I'm very happy to spend the credits on this. I found out you can actually buy more credits. I've been spending a couple of £100. Best money I've ever spent, because you don't have to wait necessarily for the next month when you're busy. So just shove it in there, people. It's an exciting new chapter. And Mark, you may not have heard the songs from the previous meetings. The last ones have been quite good. I look forward to what today's song will be about. What do you guys want to have in the song for this meeting? What's the summary of today's call for you? Starting with Mohit and going around.
Today has been a learning experience for me. I did like the whole concept behind your experiment. The flattening the medium of communication, sort of, and into a medium of creation, and that creation also not singular, but multiple authors federated, owning that piece of information. I did really like that, and look forward to where this experiment goes.
Wonderful. Eric, since you started it, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I see a Back to the Future theme happening here, where we all have knowledge of the past that we're trying to bring forward. And it's quite amazing. Like when I saw the spline that it drew and how easily it did that, yeah, that's an eye opener that there's a lot of possibility that we can access right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Great to hear. Mr. Anderson.
I was thinking something fun and ambient would be to use the metaphor Gregorian chant.
Go on.
No, I actually use it a lot when I'm working. It's nice and reflective and doesn't have an intrusive beat. I've no idea whether it would really work, but it's just a simple rising form melody, and it's contemplative. So whether that would enable you to do something. I mean, I do find it interesting. I know I've said to you, I mean, to be honest, it doesn't seem to work for me. That doesn't mean it's wrong. When I say it doesn't work for me, just, I don't know, it doesn't sort of somehow gel. So I don't learn from it. But that absolutely doesn't mean the reverse. So I think it's a really interesting idea. I suppose, of course, if you're going to go the whole way, you do it as contemporary dance. But I don't know if Claude is that able yet to do all the axes. But that's a normal. That's where this always logically ends. X in the form of contemporary dance.
So, I know you were partly humorous, but to fill the rest of you in, a lot of the XR work when we're doing the Sloan work actually turned into that, because if you do gestures, if you look at someone from out, exactly, Tom, you do just doing this here and having to do that. It becomes movement, and because you walk in the knowledge base, yes, exactly, Peter Demetrius. It does become it does become dance, and I'm very grateful for that. So, Peter Demetrius, your comments for the song.
I would say if you're going to go, Enigma has got kind of that Gregorian chant music kind of beat to it. That might be a nice backgroundy thing that the voices could float over nicely. But Today, I'm very excited to see you excited over doing this. This is fun to see.
Me too.
I mean, you're going to get ground down maybe eventually by, it doesn't quite, and it's, the edges, but by the edges. But enjoy the ride while you're still riding high on it, because it is amazing.
Thank you. Very kind words.
Don't get too cynical by us.
The cynical has already happened in my family. They have to listen to this all the time, and they are getting a bit annoyed at the world-changing opportunity here.
We need dinner. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom, and then Peter Wasilko, please.
I don't necessarily have a clear. I mean, sometimes if it's a good discussion, it takes me a week to sort of digest it, and something may come to me this afternoon. But if it's a superficial discussion, then I understand it immediately, which is high praise for this group. I would say that I guess if I were to phrase it in one term, would be if they come, you can build it.
That's actually nice.
I'm
just typing something for you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, But when it comes to the XR work we talked about, my notion for the marketing is really, really simple. Get to the point where you can do a video of someone doing something much cooler than Minority Report. And the user has the viewer has no clue what is happening, but they can see this person is really getting stuff done, really interacting with their knowledge. Then maybe they will actually want to learn it. So for something like this, if we can actually use it, it's that over the shoulder someone else saying, excuse me, that's not intuitive, but what is it? Can I learn it? Peter Wasilko. Sorry,
can
Tom,
I say one more
please.
Let me say one more quick thing there. I think that one thing we need to do is we need to be thinking about that XR environment in the same way that you're thinking about the software. The environment, and I think XR is so much more personal than a two-dimensional environment. And so if you could build a system that allows people to decorate their own rooms, so to speak, that would be very powerful. And right now, one of my biggest problems with XR is it's incredibly complex to decorate your own room. You kind of have to go off of what other people have already built for you. And I think we're heading in that direction. I'm not sure how far away that is at this point, but that's an interesting thought I want you to sit with, I guess.
Peter Wasilko, and then I'm going to share something with you guys before we all fall asleep.
Okay, for the song, maybe something with more of a Vangelis vibe for the background music.
Okay. Hang on, let's see what I'm writing. No, I just asked it a question, but I added this based on, just because we can, right? So I have a new thing. Are you all looking? As you can see in the chat, I explicitly said it doesn't have to be useful, but it should be impressive. Oh, first time we had a crash.
You remember there was that website you used to be able to go to? It was Wikipedia, and it had a sort of ambient sound. And every time a document was edited or added, you get little blinks. And I think depending on what category they were in, it would appear. It was one of those things that was wonderful and completely pointless all at the same time.
How cool is this? Right? I'm not saying it's useful, but it shows the connection. We've seen millions of these in graphics magazines, right?
Mm.
One prompt. And the prompt wasn't even, I want blue and dots in a circle and it should spin. I didn't even say that.
But isn't that the thing? That it's funny that one of the things it actually does, in a way, unsurprisingly really well, when you consider what it's read, which is a lot of bad as well as good, is that it's actually pretty good at producing not really sucky visuals, which is actually a great thing for humanity, because otherwise consider what the opposite would be.
Everyone's doing PowerPoint, 90s PowerPoints.
Yeah, 3D pie charts, that's what we need.
Because one thing we can probably do here is have it export the map view to author. So it should be really, really simple to do your work in here, and then you put on the headset and you have all these things. That's the point of having entirely open, self-contained units of self-describing knowledge, right? And it's 1948 in Norway, and I love you all, and I look forward to emails of things that are going to sound really stupid. I'll have to think about it, and I'll try to do it. Oh, also, I cannot promise that I can do next Monday. Hang on, let me just look at my calendar. There's a travel issue. Can you guys do Tuesday, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to move next week to Tuesday. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll send a general email when this has been recorded for today, and yeah.
I'll give apologies in advance if I'm not here, because I'm just unfortunately rather loaded this month.
Yeah. No, I completely understand that. Anyway, again, thank you. You're a tough group to sell ideas to, which is exactly what's needed. So let's talk in a week. And send emails with ideas. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.